Raider Church, how we doing tonight? Great to see everyone. My name's Clayton Walker. I'm one of the pastors here at Raider Church. Just want to say welcome. And just as we started last week, just want you to know whether you like Jesus or this church thing, or you're not into Jesus and this whole church thing, regardless of where you are, kind of what camp you're in, we just want to say welcome to Raider Church. You are welcome here. And even if you don't like church, like we still like you, and we're pumped that you are here. Now, I got a question for you. How many of you guys grew up going to church like I did, okay? Okay, oh, wow, lots of you. Okay, so you're going to get some of this, okay? I grew up going to church every week. Like, my first words are probably Amazing Grace or John 3:16 or something like that. So I grew up going to church. So I did the kids' camps. I did Vacation Bible School. I did all of those kinds of things. Like, I did this thing called Bible Drill. And I don't know if you know what Bible drill is or if they even still have that anymore, but I did this thing called Bible drill. And in case you're new to this whole church thing, you're like, what's a Bible drill? Okay, it's not a fire drill. It's not like a tornado drill. Bibles don't come and attack you, and so you have to prepare yourself for that. That's not what it is. Bible drill is just it's kind of more like a basketball drill, like you're practicing reading the Bible and memorizing verses. And I know that sounds like just so much fun, so exciting to a lot of you, but I did Bible drill. I competed in Bible drills and things like that. When I got older, I became in middle school, high school, I got involved in a youth group, and I did the youth camps, the mission trips. I did all of those things week in and week out. I grew up going to church. Now check this out. One of these youth camps, the very first youth camp I went to, okay? My friend, we're playing Capture the Flag, no, it wasn't Capture the Flag, it was Ghost in the Graveyard, okay? So it's the middle of the night. We're seventh graders, okay? We're brand new to this whole youth camp thing. And we're looking for people. We're out playing this game. And all of a sudden, my friend, his name was Cole, he's like, man, something's dripping on me. And I'm like, what? Like dripping on? What do you mean? It's not raining. Like, what do you mean? He's like, something's dripping on me. And so he looks up. There's a senior on top of a bridge peeing on my friend. He was livid. He was crying. I was like, I like youth camp. I'm coming back to youth camp. So I grew up doing all the youth camp stuff, the kids stuff. I'm sure a lot of you did too. But I loved, now a lot of people grow up and they hate their church. They think it's boring, all that kind of stuff. And when it came to big church, if you grew up in church, you know what I'm talking about, like big church. It was kind of boring to me, okay? But my youth group, I loved my youth ministry. It made going to church fun. Church was like my home away from home. My friends were there. My closest friends were there. I loved going to church. Now, the fact that my friends were there, that my closest friends were there, was good and bad. It was good in that it made church seem like a home away from home. It was bad in that we got in a lot of trouble because when we went to big church, we would find things to do, right? We would go wander the halls, roam in the halls, looking in, media booths and where they would switch the cameras and do things like that. We would go wandering, we would go exploring and find out all the, the hiding spots, the cool hiding spots in the church that no one knew about, and you go and you open this door and there's already a group of kids in there hiding, from their parents. Oh, okay, we'll go find the next place. So we were always looking for something fun to do. We found out that you could take these little plastic pieces off the chairs in our church, and if you could thump them really well, really hard and fast, and it would hurt. We got really good at it. We had really good aim with these things. And so we would get in wars at the back of the church with these plastic things, thumping them back and forth at each other. Well, one time we must have been really bored. We were trying to find the next thing that we were going to do. We had to keep upping kind of the ante because we get bored and we get tired of the thing we figured out before, and then we'd have to do the next thing. So we always saw, from the back, we would sit together with, I don't know why our parents would let us sit together, but we would sit together with all of our friends. And so we would notice, though, that after the service, all these people would kind of exit out this side entrance. And it was doors that were shut, and they had no windows on the other side, so you couldn't see what was on the other side. And so for some reason, one of us had this great idea to walk around the outside of the church, go in this other entrance, and rope tie the doors shut. So we tied these doors shut, And we came back around and waited for the end of the service. And we're like, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be sweet, you know. And so we're just waiting. Like, this is one of the best. I mean, this is one of the most memorable things I have about church, like big church growing up. And so we're waiting for the end of the service. So sure enough, the service lets out. First guy, I mean, he is just walking like he is ready. Like he is going to his car to get to Chili's, you know, to beat everybody else there, or Cheddar, you know, whatever. And so he's walking and he just goes like this. Boom, and just smashes his face right into these doors, okay? So, but because the doors are shut and no one else knows what's going on, because there's this huge crowd of people, like they're kind of all still walking and like jamming into each other, and he's like trying to back up, but he can't get away from the door. And so this huge crowd of people is like all like log jammed into this door, and they can't get out. We were dying. Well, sure enough, our parents see what's happening, and they see that we're laughing, and we got the look like the death stare. You know, I mean, like this look from the pits of hell. Like, you are going to die. Like, we are going to kill you when we get home. So we had a lot of fun at Big Church, okay? But like I said, man, I loved going to church because it was where my friends were. It was like my home away from home. Well, Jesus grew up going to temple with his family. And in the story we're going to see tonight, in the passage we're going to see tonight, you're going to see Jesus loved going to the temple. In fact, he couldn't get enough of it. So if you got a Bible, turn to Luke chapter 2. Luke chapter 2, we're going to start in verse 41. But before you get there, I want you to go ahead and turn there. I mean, Jesus growing up, I mean, you know, like, he had to have some similar stories, right? I mean, the youth group's running out of pizza. He just multiplies the pizza and the Coke, right? I mean, Jesus, the pastor's talking. He doesn't like what he's saying. You know, instead of getting bored and going to sleep, he just like, let there be silence and no more speaking. You know, I mean, Jesus growing up in church had to be, in temple, had to be hilarious. He loved going, but it wasn't for those reasons. So, Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 41. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When Jesus was 12 years old, they attended the festival as usual. So every year, as usual, his family's going to Jerusalem to celebrate this Passover festival at the temple. After the celebration was over, they started home to Nazareth. So him and his family, they're going from Nazareth to Jerusalem to the temple for Passover, and then they would go back home to Nazareth. But check this out. It says they started home to Nazareth, but Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents missed him at first because they assumed he was among the other travelers. They would travel in these big caravans together because it was a dangerous journey from Nazareth to Jerusalem and back. And so they'd travel in these huge caravans. So they just thought he was playing with the other kids. But when he didn't show up that evening, they started looking for him among their relatives and friends. And when they couldn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem to search for him there. Check this out. 3 days later, they finally discovered him. Let me ask you this. Have any of you ever been lost? Like you're growing up and your parents lost you, left you somewhere, you know, whatever. Okay, this one person is going to know what I'm talking about. Is going to identify with me. All right. Okay, so I'm at SeaWorld. I'm little Clayton. Okay, I'm like, I don't know, you know, I'm in early elementary school. Okay, so we're at SeaWorld, all right? Tons and tons of people. It's hot, you know, we're all sweating, all this kind of stuff. Tons of kids, tons of people, just kind of like this. And you know, sure enough, we're at this point, we're figuring out rides and what we're going to do and all this kind of stuff. And my parents walk off. And I'm sure I was joking around, goofing off, doing, you know, something. I have no idea. But I look around, all of a sudden my family's gone. I don't know where they're at. So I start looking around, I start running around. I can't find them. I can't find them anywhere. So I start to panic. I start crying. And so I sat down on this curb. And I just sat there. I had my head down, and I was just sobbing because I thought I was gone. Like, I can't find my parents. They're gone. None of you are saying aw right now. And that really offends me that you don't care that I was lost from my parents. So anyways, so I'm just sitting there. I'm crying and crying and crying. And some people begin to realize, hey, this kid, there's something wrong, like he's upset. And so some people come around me and they start to ask, you know, what's wrong or whatever, and I can't find my family. So, I mean, I just stayed there because they were trying to get me to go somewhere. I was like, no, I know if I'm lost, like I just got to stay right where I'm at. Like I got to stay here. And they're like, no, let's take you to this place. And I'm like, no, I've got to stay right here. I've got to stay right where I'm at. This is where my parents left me. This is where, I'm going to stay. And so I stayed there. Well, sure enough, a couple hours later, my parents, they couldn't find me. They came and found me at SeaWorld. Now, it's one thing, okay, for parents to lose their kid, right? Just a normal, everyday thing. Maybe not for most of them, okay? I'm a parent. I got 3 kids. I threaten my kids within an inch of their life. Stay with us. Stay with me. We were at the Tech game on Saturday, and we're walking through these huge crowds of people, and we brought our 2 sons with us. We didn't bring our daughter, Nixon. She's 2. It would have been miserable with her there. But we did bring our 2 sons. They're 8 and 5. And I mean, everywhere we went, I'm holding them by their hand. I don't want them to get away from me in this huge crowd of people because I don't want them to get lost like I did at SeaWorld. So we're holding on to their hands, just taking them everywhere. But think about this. How do you lose the Son of God? How do you lose Jesus for 3 days? How is that even possible? He's the Son of God. Now, Jesus, he had to be the best at hide and seek, right? If Jesus hides, you're not finding him, okay? Well, I think Jesus is playing a little hide and seek because his parents can't find him for 3 days. 3 days. They're looking for him. They can't find him. Check out where he was. Check out where Jesus was hiding. In the temple. He got him, didn't he? They never would have guessed it. He's hiding in the temple. Look what it says, though. He's sitting among the religious teachers, listening to them and asking questions. All who heard Jesus talking, were amazed at his understanding and his answers. His parents didn't know what to think. Son, his mother said to him, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been frantic, searching for you everywhere. But check out what Jesus says. Why did you need to search for me? Mom, what's the big deal? Why did you need to search for me? He asked. But look what he says. Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house? But they didn't understand what he meant. And then he returned to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them, obedient to his parents. And his mother stored all these things in her heart. Then check this out. Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and people. In other words, he grew spiritually. He grew in wisdom. He grew in his stature, in his relationship with people and the way that people viewed him and thought about him. He grew in his relationship with God. Jesus grew spiritually as a result. So there's a couple takeaways from this story that I want you to get. If you got a phone, you can write these down. You got something to write with, you can write these down. But a couple takeaways from this story. Number one, first takeaway is this, is that you need to consistently attend the house. You need to consistently attend the house. That's what Jesus and his family did, right? I mean, it says in the verses we just read that Jesus' family every year, as usual, would travel from Nazareth to Jerusalem for the Passover festival at the temple. Every year, as usual. In other words, they were devout Jews. Meaning, they weren't just consistently attending these annual gatherings and celebrations. They would have been consistent and disciplined in attending their weekly prayer gatherings, their weekly meeting times. Their daily, for a devout Jew, their daily prayer times that they would have just even on their own. They were devout. They would consistently, it says, as usual, attend this temple. They were consistent. What about you? Does that describe you? Are you consistently attending the house? And what I mean by the house is today, I mean the church. Jesus is talking about his Father's house in this passage. He's talking about the temple. That's where they would go to meet with God and to meet with other followers. That's where they would go. But today, now, in the New Testament, the New Testament calls the New Covenant, we don't have to go to this temple, or the church isn't this literal house of God anymore. At least not the building itself. We're in a meeting room. This isn't a literal house of God because of the building. No, this is a house of God because we're here. You're here. You see, the New Testament explains this idea of you and I being like a family. Like we're brothers and sisters in Christ. We're like this family of God, and we've got a heavenly Father. So in that sense, when we come together, anywhere we come together, it's the house. It's the house of God. Because we're a spiritual family, and we have a spiritual heavenly dad. And so wherever we come together, it's the house of God. So my question for you is, are you consistently, regularly attending the house? Coming together with other followers of Jesus to worship God and to hear from God and talk about God and serve God. Is that a part of your life? Is that a usual thing that happens in your life? You see, Jesus couldn't get enough of it. I mean, when everybody is left, everybody's done the Passover thing, they've done their kind of religious thing. They leave, they take off. Jesus stays behind. He can't get enough of it. He wants more. And so he stays behind and he begins to talk with these religious leaders and discuss spiritual things with them. And they're amazed at his understanding and his wisdom and his answers and the things that he has to say. You see, Jesus can't get enough of being at the house. He can't get enough of it. He wants more and more. Reminds me of a guy named Joshua in the Old Testament. If you don't know who Joshua is, you have Moses who led the Israelites out of captivity from the Egyptians, and they wander around in the desert for a while, and Joshua is the one that ends up taking the Israelites, who leads them into the promised land. Well, Joshua was an assistant to Moses. He was like Moses' right-hand man. And it's so cool in Exodus 33. Moses goes into the tent of meeting, this tabernacle, to meet with God and to speak with him. And it says that when Moses would go into this tent, Moses would speak to God like face to face. It says in Exodus 33, whenever Moses would go into this temple, to the tabernacle at the time, and meet with God, this pillar of cloud would come down from heaven, would come upon the tabernacle. And Exodus 33 says that all of Israel would come out in front of their tent and they would just bow down and worship because of what they were seeing, because they knew Moses was in there talking with God. Well, it says towards the end of Exodus 33 that when Moses would leave the tent of meeting, his assistant Joshua would stay behind. He would stay behind. And every time I read that and I think about Joshua, like just watching this whole thing unfold. Moses going in, knowing he's speaking with God, seeing this pillar of cloud. I mean, he's right there. He's seeing the whole thing. He's experiencing the whole thing. And he's watching this and he's seeing this happen. He's seeing the presence of God come down in this place. And all I can picture Joshua's face is being like, what? What is this? This is so amazing. This is so incredible. And when Moses was done and he would leave, Joshua was just left standing there. He didn't want to leave. He wants more. He can't get enough of it. Jesus is the same way. He even tells his parents, why'd you have to look for him? Surely you would have known I must be in my Father's house. Like I have to be in there. I can't get enough of being in my Father's house. It's where I want to be. So it says in verse 52, as a result, Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and people. Let me ask you a question. Do you want that to be true of you? Wouldn't you like that to be true of you, that you're growing in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God in your relationship with God and in favor with people in your relationships with people? I mean, don't you want that to be true of you? That you're growing spiritually? If you want that to be true of you, then like Jesus, like Joshua, you need to be regularly in the house. You need to consistently attend the house. Because when you do, you'll grow spiritually. And as you grow, you won't be able to get enough of it. You know, it's so cool. Last semester, and even as we've launched these first couple of weeks, how many of you guys have just come up to me and said, man, this is amazing. I love being here. I can't wait for next Tuesday. When we broke for the summer, man, I was sad. Like, I couldn't wait to get back here for this fall. I know some of you felt the same. I love being here. I can't get enough of it. And I hope you feel the same way. And if you don't, my hope is that God will change your heart. He'll give you a desire for himself, and you wouldn't be able to help but be here. Like, you're going to be here each and every week as usual, just like Jesus and his family. Second takeaway is this. We need to prioritize attending the house. We need to prioritize attending the house. You remember what they said they were amazed at Jesus for? Do you remember what they said? Like, Jesus is meeting with these teachers and these spiritual leaders, and he's having these conversations with them. And it says they were amazed at Jesus. You remember what it was for? Oh, that's right. It was keg stands, wasn't it? They were amazed at Jesus because of the keg stands he could do. Oh, no, that wasn't it. That's not right. Man, what was it? Oh, it was because he was the best at Call of Duty, right? I mean, they couldn't believe how amazing Jesus was at playing Call of Duty. Wasn't that it? No, that wasn't it, was it? No. It was his Twitter followers, right? I mean, they couldn't believe how many followers Jesus had on Twitter. No, that wasn't it either. You see, we are concerned about worldly things. A lot of times, even as followers of Jesus, those are the things that dominate our minds, our hearts, our thoughts. But what they were amazed at Jesus for was spiritual things. They were amazed at the conversations, the spiritual conversations that he was having, the wisdom that he had. They were amazed at him for spiritual things. And you see, what happens for most of us a lot of times is because we put more importance or value on worldly things and being known for worldly things, that we prioritize the things of this world over spiritual things. And so when there's a choice, we choose the worldly thing rather than the spiritual thing. But you see, Jesus and his family, they prioritize going to the house. I mean, this trip that they would take, it was a long trip. It was a dangerous trip. It took them away from their normal schedule, from their normal routine. I mean, for days, they prioritized it. It was important to them. And so they never missed. You know, this last spring, my son Levi played baseball, and he's gotten to an age and a size and everything where he's gotten pretty good. And he was hitting the ball like just really well this year and started feeling really, really well. And he started hitting some really great hits. And about midway through the season, like he was hitting some home runs. Now he's 8, so these are in the park, but he's hitting them to the fence. Well, the first home run that he hit this spring, he goes running around the bases, and I'm helping coach this team. I mean, I'm out on the infield like screaming, like, go, run, go. You know, I'm just screaming and yelling. He comes rounding around third base. I mean, I'm freaking out. Like, I'm running like his team's in the dugout, you know, but I'm running to home plate. Like, and he comes running around, and he hits home plate, and he comes running to me, and it's this perfect, like, dad-son moment. He comes running from home plate. He jumps up into my arms, and I catch him and just hug him. There you go. But it really was. It was this perfect moment. And he hit several more after that, but we would put him in bed each night, and he started asking me, Dad, you remember that home run? Yeah, Levi, I remember that hit. You remember I came around home plate and you were there, and I came and I jumped up in your arms? I say, yeah, I remember that. He'd say, Dad, wasn't that an amazing hit? I'll say, Levi, yeah, it was an incredible hit. It was a great hit. But I began to notice he kept asking me about it, like night after night. Dad, you remember that hit? Wasn't that so cool? I started thinking, yeah, it was cool. But I began to think, you know, he's asking me for praise in something That's cool. It's not good or bad. It's a good thing, but it's not the best thing. Like, it's not what's most important. And so I began to get a little concerned, like that he wants praise from me for a worldly thing, which is great. It's fine. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. I want to encourage him in those things too. But I begin to feel like God's saying, hey, Clayton, do you only want him to have encouragement from you for worldly things? And so the next time Levi asked about the hit, I said, Levi, yeah, that was an amazing hit. It was great. But here's what I want you to know. What is most important? Like, if I could be proud of you for anything in the entire world, like for just one thing, if it was one thing, do you know what the one thing that I would want to be the most proud of you for? Like that it would excite me even more than the home run? He's like, what, Dad? And I said, that you would follow Jesus with all of your heart. That you would serve Jesus. That you'd love him. That's what I'm most excited about. I'm excited about the home runs. I'm excited that you're good at baseball or that you get this grade but I'm most excited about the spiritual things in your life. And so now every once in a while when we're going to bed, if we're talking about things, whatever, I'll say, yeah, it's great. I'll encourage him, whatever. I'll say, but Levi, remember, what's most important? And he'll say, my relationship with Jesus. And I say, yep, that's exactly right. Because see, worldly things, they're fine. But it's not what's most important. And so I want Levi to know that in our house, we prioritize our relationship with Jesus above everything. Above baseball, above money, above jobs, schedules, school, everything. Jesus is most important. And so if something conflicts with Jesus or my kid's spiritual growth, sorry, we're not going to do that thing, that activity. Because what's most important is my kid's relationship with Jesus. You see, Jesus and his family, they prioritized attending the house. They went on this long trip. It was dangerous. It took them away from their normal schedule. Like they had to put their jobs and their life and everything on hold in order to go to this annual celebration for Passover. And like they're taking this long journey to Jerusalem. I mean, the kids in the group, what they had to be asking, right? Are we there yet? How long is it going to take? When my kids ask that, I normally say, okay, it's going to be like 3 more Toy Stories and like 2 more Frozens and like 3 more How to Train Your Dragons, okay? So just that's how long it's going to be. In fact, you know what? We're never going to get there. We're going to be driving forever. So there you go, all right? There's no reason to ask me anymore. So, but kids had to be asking, Dad, Mom, Dad, how much longer, how much further? We've been walking forever. But then the next question they had to ask. Right? Why are we doing this? Why are we walking from Nazareth to Jerusalem? After it was over, Mom, Dad, why are we walking back to Nazareth? Why are we going on this long journey just for this celebration? Like, why do we have to do this every year? God actually told the Israelites, when your kids ask you these kinds of questions, he told them the answer they needed to give. Because he knew as they would make such huge sacrifices in order to be a part of these celebrations, these festivals, the kids would start to ask questions. They would start to ask, why are we doing this? And he would tell the parents, you need to be ready to give them an answer. And so the parents would say, son, the reason why we're going to Jerusalem for Passover is to celebrate that God's judgment that we deserved passed over us when God saw the blood of the Lamb that was shed over our doorpost in our place. His judgment passed over us. We deserved it. But the blood of the Lamb saved us. And so we go each year to celebrate that God rescued us from slavery through the blood of the Lamb. Sound familiar? God's judgment that you and I deserved passed over us or will pass over you if you've never committed your life to Jesus. God's judgment passes over you when God sees the blood of the Lamb, Jesus, who was slaughtered for you in your place. And see, some of you, you've never made that decision. You never committed your life to Jesus before. And so when you stand before God, the judgment of God won't pass over you. No, you will experience the judgment of God. The Bible says eternity separated from God in a place called hell. You see, the only way for God's judgment to pass over you is to commit your life to Jesus. The Bible says when you make that decision, the blood of the Lamb, Jesus, that was shed for you, will cover your sin. And God's judgment will pass over you. See, a lot of people think, well, I've been a good person. I go to church, whatever. I've been good enough. Listen, the Bible says good people don't go to heaven. Forgiven people do. You're forgiven of your sin when you commit your life to follow Jesus. Not when you've been good enough. Not when you've been to church enough times. And not even because you grew up going to church week in and week out. That's not going to save you. You're saved when the blood of the Lamb covers your sin. Some of you here tonight, you need to commit your life to Jesus for the first time. If that's you, I want to challenge you to drop by our Next Step Center after this service. We've got a team there that wants to know about that decision, pray with you, and help point you in the right direction and what next steps to take from here. So if tonight's your night to commit your life to Christ, make sure to drop by there and let our team know. You can also go onto that form on our site, RaiderChurch.com, fill out that form and check a box. This is I'm committing my life to Christ, and we'll be in touch with you through there too. But you see, this is why we prioritize coming to the house. It's not to be religious. It's not in order to be right with God. We don't prioritize coming here, coming to the house, coming together as the family of God. We don't prioritize that to be right with God. We do it because we're right with God. We do it to celebrate that God's judgment passed over us because of what Jesus has done for us. That's why we come to the house. It's a celebration of what Jesus has done for us. When I was 16, like I told you, I grew up and going to church. When I was 16, my parents got divorced. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life. It was a terrible, terrible time in our family's history and our family's life. Caused a lot of pain, caused a lot of suffering. It was awful. Some of you have been there, you know what I'm talking about. But you see, because I had grown up going to church every week, and a lot of times my parents took me even when I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to church that day, but my parents took me anyways. That led eventually being part of this youth group, and I got involved in a small group, and that led to me developing and having a personal relationship with Jesus by being a part of that youth group, by being a part of that small group. Changed the entire direction of my life. You see, I was going to the house every week. And so I was prepared for that moment. Catch this. I was prepared for that moment because I had a home away from home. It didn't happen like my parents get divorced and they start scrambling like, what do we do with Clayton? What are we going to do? Like every other kid turns away from God and hates God and rejects God and goes and does their own thing and goes off the deep end and just completely loses. That's what every other kid does. What are we going to do with Clayton? That's not the way it was with me. You see, I was prepared for that moment because my house, my family consistently attended the house. We prioritized attending the house. And so I was prepared for that moment because I had a home away from home. if you're going to grow spiritually, if you're going to be prepared for those moments in your life, then you need a home away from home. If you're going to grow spiritually like Jesus, you're going to grow in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men, if that's going to be true of you, then you need a home away from home. You need to consistently attend the house. You need to prioritize attending the house. You need a home away from home. So I want to challenge you, all of you that are here tonight, to go all in with Raider Church. Go all in. Some of you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I want to challenge you to go all in with Raider Church and come here every week and look for a friend that you can invite to come and join this house every week. I want to challenge you to go all in, to come home and to find your home away from home. It's my prayer you'll find it here, because every one of us need it if we're going to grow spiritually and if we're going to be prepared for those moments in life that will come. It's not a matter of if it's a matter of when. So I want to challenge you to find your home away from home. And again, it's our prayer that could be here. God, I pray for every student in this room right now, God, that they would find their home away from home. God, because you know, and I know your word tells us how important that is. That to consistently attend the house and prioritize attending the house, God, it's crucial to our spiritual development, to our spiritual growth. And so, God, I pray that it would be true of us, that we're here every week, not because of some religious duty, but because we can't get enough of you. We can't get enough of your presence that's here when we come together. We can't get enough of being together with the family of God and celebrating that your judgment passed over us because of the blood of our Lamb, Jesus.
Thanks for checking out one of our messages today. For more information about our church or to watch other messages, you can go to our website at experiencalifenow.com. Let us know if we can serve you in any way, and we hope to see you real soon.